Before we start with the training, let us understand about Assure Food Safety. Assure Food Safety is a global food safety certifications consulting platform where you can find solution to all your queries related to food safety. Since 2017, we've assisted more than 1,000 clients throughout the supply chain for food safety certification, including BRCGS, food packaging, FSSC 22000, ISO 22000. If you have food safety or quality management system problem, we know how to solve it quickly and efficiently. Explore our services, including trainings, documentation, designing, posters, and more. Visit our website at www.assurefoodsafety.com and explore our services, get updated about latest food safety news topics, and also check our online store where you can buy food safety posters, templates, and many such useful tools to keep you a step ahead in food safety. We assure you that your journey towards food safety is going to be a simple one. Watch, learn, and implement with Assure. Our mission is to provide highest quality services to our clients and enhance the food safety and security globally. To always keep sustainability principles as our prime focus while we do so. To impact more than 20,000 food establishments by 2030. Use of digital and green solutions to have zero carbon footprint. Let's now begin with the topic for today, that is food defense. Before we start, please don't forget to visit our website at www.assurefoodsafety.com and also email us at info@assurefoodsafety.com. So first, let's understand the background. Food defense is a crucial element in protecting your business and consumers from internal and external threats. It encompasses a range of potential threats from relatively common tamper hoaxes and less probable terrorist attacks. Supply chain or manufacturing threats can often be mitigated to reduce a wide range of threats. For example, putting a locking lid on a vat can facilitate a wide range of potential intentional attacks. The FSSC 22000 additional requirements contain a specific requirement on food defense. Now let's understand the definition of food defense. The GFSI definition of food defense is the process to ensure the security of food, food ingredients, feed, or food packaging from all forms of intentional malicious attack, including ideologically motivated attack leading to contamination or unsafe product. So to break down this sentence and understand the definition, it is a process to ensure the security of not only food but food ingredients, feed, and food packaging, which tells you that it is only not limited to food but also the ingredients, feeds, and also the food packaging that can be used to contain the food in it. So it's across all the food categories that are there under FSSC. It focuses on the intentional malicious attack, okay, which is ideologically motivated. So unlike food fraud, it is not an economically motivated attack. Here the intention is to cause harm to the consumer or to the brand or the company. So that is basically the idea about it. So which can lead to contamination or unsafe product. So just remember that sometimes the contamination may not be harmful to the consumer, but in most cases it could be and may not be something which is desirable to the characteristic of the product. Regardless of the fact, it is important to safeguard the product in order to avoid any incidents which can lead to threats to the product. So there are other frequently used definitions as well. As per PAS 96 2017, food defense is the procedures adopted to ensure food and drink security and supply chains from malicious and ideologically motivated attacks, leading to contamination or supply disruption. As per FDA, food defense is effort to protect food from intentional adulteration from acts intended to cause wide-scale harm to public health, including acts of terrorism targeting the food supply. Now let's understand the concept of food defense. As you know that industry and regulators have developed food safety management systems based on hazard analysis critical control point principles which have been proven effective against unintended food safety hazards. Hazard principles, however, have not been routinely used to detect or mitigate deliberate attacks and are therefore not relevant to food defense. The motivation or root cause of food defense is the intent to cause harm or to consumers or companies. This is different from the motivation for food fraud, which is exclusively for economic gain. Therefore, food defense prevention requires a different approach than the control of unintentional food safety hazards, that is HACCP, and food fraud prevention. If you look at the picture on the right hand side, you will see that there are two sites, one which explains the unintentional or accidental adulteration and other side is intentional adulteration. So food quality and food safety lies onto the uh, unintentional adulteration and food fraud and food defense lies into the intentional adulteration. But just understand that both the spheres or both the circles also a little bit may divert to the intentional or unintentional sides as well, but the main occurrence happens because of either of the two sides. So for food quality and food safety, it is science based phenomena. It's not that someone would purposefully do it, but there are also chances that that can happen. But food fraud and food defense is basically intentional adulteration, which is mainly done either for economic gain, like in the case of food fraud, and in case of food defense, it can be due to the ideologically driven motivation. So that really explains really well what is the different concepts which are used within the food safety management system. So now let's talk about FSSC 22000 scheme requirements with respect to food defense. So it is covering all the food chain categories within FSSC 22000. So the requirements are stated as follows. Conduct and document the food defense threat assessment based on defined methodology to identify and evaluate potential threats linked to the processes and products within the scope of organization. So it is required that you should conduct and document food defense threat assessment. So it should be based on a defined methodology. It should not be just identifying that there should be CCTVs, there should be security, and there should be other arrangements like alarm system and all those things in the site without actually identifying where and when and why it is required within the entire the entire facility. Develop and implement appropriate mitigation measures for the significant threats. So also understand that within the facility there could be some threats that could not be really significant, like for example if you have very good supervision within an area where the product is not really exposed to any such kind of threat, so you would not require to have multiple arrangement done in that area. Okay, it all depends upon where your product is most exposed to such kind of threats or such kind of activity. Also whether you are within the geographical region which has more such kind of activities that are happening. So all those different factors play an important role within the considerations. Next is the organization shall have a documented food defense plan based on the threat assessment, specifying the mitigation measures and verification procedures. So basically also understand that based on the threat assessment, first you identify the threats that you have, then you make a food defense plan in which you write down the mitigation measures. So whenever you're having any kind of mitigation measures like having the surveillance camera or the alarm system or access control within the areas or heavy supervision within the areas or something like, if you are exposed to threats of manipulation to the CCPs that you have, which are very crucial to the food safety. So what kind of system do you have? If you have HR, very strict HR policy to understand the background of the person that you're hiring, or the security screening that happens. So all those are, considered to be the verification, sorry, mitigation measures, and also the verification procedures, whether all these are actually working in place. All the verification of those mitigations, wherein you will be actually looking at the CCTV camera, like what kind of activities are happening, or regulate a procedure wherein the daily daily such activities have been recorded. So only having mitigations in place doesn't work, but also make sure that you on the regular basis verify those procedures. The food defense plan shall be implemented and supported by the organization's FSMS. So whenever you're designing an FSMS, your food defense plan should be complementary to it. It should not be like you are having a very completely isolated team who are just working on the food defense and making all the mitigations work, but not blending together with the food safety management system. So which means that whenever you are doing any kind of such mitigation measures in place, or any resources that are required, and also making sure that you are verifying those those mitigations, and also making sure that the top management is aware about all those things. So it becomes part of the FSMS itself, where you are making sure that the progress that is happening, and the activities, and all the different different updates that need to be there in terms of food defense are reaching the top management whenever your MRMs happen, or even the internal audits happen. So it should blend all together with the FSMs. The plan shall comply with the applicable legislation, cover the processes and products within the organization's scope, and kept up to date. So it all depends if the the site where it is located might have some local legislation in place, which also considers food defense related legislation, so that can also be included within the food defense plan. For food chain category F2, in addition to above, the organization shall ensure that its suppliers have a food defense plan in place. Okay. So next is implementation. So to implement the FSSC 22000 food defense requirements, a logical, systematic and risk-based approach should be followed. It must be noted that there are many approaches, and FSSC leaves the choice to the organization. So when we talk about FSSC's approach towards food defense, it's quite it is quite left to the site to adapt to it, but also it should be very logical system. It should not be just copy paste from some other kind of plan which may not be working in each and every site. So you can adapt to the various plans that are there, like Carver shock plus shock, then FDA food defense planner, plan builder, even using the TACCEP, threat assessment critical control point. These all systems can be used to make the food defense. Now let's talk about to assist in implementing the clauses of FSSC 22000, the following way of working is recommended. So this is the way how you will be designing the food defense plan. Just understand that it is very much similar approach to how HACCP is designed, but it's a little bit different. We'll discuss how it's different here. So first step is to establish a food defense team. Okay, so you need to have a team which is similar to HACCP, how you need to have multidisciplinary team. So why it is required to have a multidisciplinary team is because when you have people from different departments or different background or different aspect of the same site, you have the different kind of experiences as well as perspective, which are very required. So when we talk about food defense team, we would require someone obviously from the food safety or quality department, the production department. Then you would also require someone from, say, HR, who will be dealing a lot with the people. See, because when you talk about food defense, it all comes to, how people will react within an environment where, there could be any kind of ideologically motivated activities. So yes, that's the reason HR will be important here. Then if sometimes it can also happen that, security personnel can be involved, then it could be someone from maintenance department, all those things. But it all depends upon site to site and what kind of departments would be required. But yeah, it should be a multidisciplinary team. Then conduct a threat assessment, that is called as TACIP. Identify and evaluate potential threats linked to the processes and products within the scope of organization. So basically you need to take out your flow diagram, or within, the facility, right from procurement to the dispatch, and then understand what are the different areas where there is a possibility of the threats. So just understand that this will not be viewed as something from just the perspective of, product being susceptible to contamination only. It can also be something like whether the product is stored completely closed within its packaging, but then stored at a unit which doesn't have any security system. Someone can easily walk into it and then tamper with the product. So something like that. Define the significant threats. Okay, so just like how CCPs are defined by having any significant hazards in place, here you need to identify the significant threats that could, potentially be very significant when occur, or such kind of activities happen. Identify, select and implement appropriate mitigation measures for significant threats. So in this, like I gave an example that, if you think that within your facility, once your product has been manufactured, it is stored within the unit, but outside the actual factory, in a outdoor storage where there is not much security. So that becomes like a, significant threat to your process, because now you don't have a security system there, and also your product is very much vulnerable to any kind of threat of being tampered with or contaminated or stolen, and all those things. And yeah, so then document the threat assessment, mitigation measures, verification and incident management procedures in a food defense plan supported by FSMS. So in this, then you need to make sure that, mitigation measures are there, and even verification measures are in place. And if at all any such activity happens, how you are going to respond to it. And also having such mitigation measures in place itself, in a way that the motivation factor of the person, or any kind of individual who would do such kind of activity, would be lower. So that is something which you need to be aware of. Develop a practical training and communication strategy and implement food defense plan. So also it is important that people are aware about how to deal with such situations. So for us to ensure that any kind of such activity, there has to be a mindset within the facility that how to avoid such situations, having the right kind of mitigation measures in place, creating awareness within the employees, and letting them know that what is actually not tolerated, which scenarios can be dangerous to the reputation of the brand and safety of the product, so that they are well aware about the various implementation or mitigation measures that should be in place. So that's about the the implementation that is there. So some important implementations also include that when defining a food defense strategy, The potential threats identified shall be assessed for their significance. A risk matrix similar to HACCP can be used, like we discussed, likelihood of occurrence and impact or consequence. So in this, in the HACCP, what we do is we use the occurrence into multiplied by severity. So here we are using impact or consequence. Okay. Other factors such as accessibility, likelihood of detection, and recognizability may be used as further indicators. The plan shall be integrated into and supported by the organization's FSMS and all for all its products. The effectiveness of control measures and protection against potential threats largely depends on people. Therefore, a training or communication program is essential. In addition, category F2 organizations for brokering and trading must ensure that the suppliers have a food defense plan in place. Okay, so what additional factor that they have mentioned here is, see, whenever any kind of incident happens wherein there is deliberate contamination within the food. Suppose any kind of person who's angry with the not having enough compensation while they're working in the company, and they have some grudge against the company, and now that person wants to cause any kind of harm to the product to bring down the brand reputation. So yes, there is a factor which is involved of occurrence, like how often that can happen, and towards the impact or consequence, like how bad it would be for the product safety. So that is there. But also the other factor that they are saying is accessibility, whether that person was able to get access to those areas where the product is exposed or no. Then likelihood of detection. Okay, so that person has access, but then is that person going to be caught? Is there any CCTV? Is there any person who's supervising that area, will, or no one is there around where the product is exposed? Or recognizability, or whether such activity, whether it happens, someone is not going to find out, like if anything is gone wrong or something like that. One example to that is, suppose if there is any metal contamination that a person does, okay, and then within the system, before it gets packed, there is alarm system wherein metal detector beeps, and then you can just identify, okay, this kind of contamination is there, and then you can stop the product there and there. Okay, so such systems really help in identifying, and then that person will be not motivated to make such kind of activities, or get involved in any kind of such thing. So also for that, it's also important that to create the awareness, because people within the areas, they are not sometimes aware about what is the system that the site is having, and what kind of incidences which can occur. So for that also, training is very important, that all the people are very well trained and understand what kind of systems that the site have, and how it can also make sure that their motivation to make things worse for the site won't take place, because they know that it's likely not going to succeed. So you have to always think about from the criminal mindset. If you know that you're going to get caught doing this activity, you will not do it, and all the loopholes within the system, and that you're not going to get caught, and I'm going to successfully tamper with the product and make sure that the product brand name gets spoiled, so I will do it. So the food defense is basically making sure that you have identified all those loopholes and made sure that the attacker doesn't have any option left. So in a sense, the food defense approach aims to answer the following key questions: who might want to attack us? How might they do it? What is the potential public health impact? How can we prevent this from happening? So these are the questions that we need to make sure that we know the answers before having all the systems in place. So moving forward, for defense team and training. The threat assessment is performed by a multidisciplinary team with a wide range of expertise. Like I mentioned, it should be from HR, security, quality, IT, production, facility manager. Training of team is required. Many trainings are available from a wide range of organizations. An example of this is Food for Prevention Think Tank. Think Tank, you can look at this kind of um, websites. The FDA provides free online training materials, and although it is US FDA regulatory compliance focused, the training assists in educating the food industry on ways to help protecting food supply from deliberate act contamination. So these are all different trainings can be there. Also, you can contact Assure Food Safety if you would like to give training to your employees in terms of food defense. So let's understand the differences between HACCP, TACCP and VACCP. You must have heard about these terms which are used along with these three different concepts, which is food safety. We normally have HACCP in it. So it's prevention of unintentional accidental adulteration which causes foodborne illness. So in case of food defense, which is what we're discussing in this presentation, it's known as TACCP, Threat Assessment Critical Control Point. It is prevention of intentional adulteration. So it can be behaviorally or ideologically motivated. And the result of this can also be foodborne illnesses, but it can also be some kind of the main objective of this can be to bring down the brand, or to just take the personal grudge, or all those kind of things. So then there is food fraud, which is called as VASP, Vulnerability Assessment Critical Control Point. So which is prevention of intentional adulteration, which is economically motivated. Something like adulteration of spices, adulteration of milk. So the idea behind that is to gain economically and to provide inferior quality food product. Okay, so that those are the different concepts that we are. Okay. So now for auditors, how the auditors look at this particular clause and how they do the audit. If you're doing an audit, you need to understand what are the different ways, questions that you need to ask. If you are from the industry, or any manufacturing side, then you need to understand how your internal audit should be conducted, because eventually when your site is audited, this is how the perspective of the auditor is going to be when they're auditing this particular clause under FSSC 22000 for food defense. Auditors should assess the threat assessment, identification and implementation of mitigation measures is adequate by following these questions. Is there a team with the correct competencies and knowledge? Okay, that is the first question. So you would require your team to have properly trained individuals who are knowing about the food defense. You cannot have people within the food defense team who do not know anything about food defense, or do not know anything about what are the threats in your system. They have not worked on identifying those threats, or even know about the mitigation measures that are in place. Like, how are they going to stop those incidences from happening, right? Has a threat assessment been performed and documented? So this is also important, that it will be checked by the auditor whether you have a threat assessment plan or no. So it cannot be just downloaded from internet. You need to sit down and make sure that you have a threat assessment plan for your facility, to identify all the threats. Are relevant threats identified? So also, when auditor looks at the facility when they go on to audit, they will see that is your product exposed to certain kind of threats that you have not identified. If all of the threats that are there in the facility have been identified, then that's not an issue. Breadth of threat assessment: has the whole supply chain been assessed, or not just one side? So threat assessment is also important when you are dealing with the different stakeholders within your supply chain. So now you are having an external storage, offsite storage area, also procuring your products, raw materials from any site, from where there could be any attacker who can contaminate before even the raw material reach you, okay, or even when your product is completely processed and then it goes to the distributor. So are there any strict measures in place to avoid any kind of attacks there? So that is also one part of threat assessment that should be considered. Is there a methodology to determine the significance of the threats? So basically the methodology that we talked about is occurrence into the impact, and also the consideration of other factors that are there is any possibility of detection and any possibility of recognition of such kind of activity. So that is mainly which the auditors will check when they are auditing this particular clause. When significant threats are identified, is there a documented food defense plan? Okay, so it's obvious that every site will not have significant threats, but when it comes to food products there could be possibility that it should be there. So in that case there should be a food defense plan in place in which you need to mention all the threats that you've identified and all the measures which are there. And here just remember one thing: sometimes the as an auditor or as a person who is implementing food defense at your site, it's not required that every time you have some measures just after doing the food defense plan, because remember it's sometimes also identifying the already present measures that you have. Whenever any site see these CCTV and all those things, they may be implemented for some other purpose, something like to avoid stealing and all those things. Okay, at that time maybe a few years back when maybe those measures were already there, the purpose was not to implement food defense. But now you need to think like, okay, these measures are already there in place. Are they working in the favor of food defense or are they not? Okay, something like heavy supervision or access control. Now access control is mainly yes, it does benefit food defense because it avoids the people who are not supposed to be in the area to enter it, but actually it is to avoid any kind of layman entering into the facility to avoid any kind of contamination, or again to avoid any kind of theft, or all those kind of things. So sites who are very new in this in this food safety ecosystem, or implementing all those new requirements, need to also put emphasis of what already measures they have in place and how it can be blended into the food defense plan. Okay, it's not that you just need to come up with all the mitigation measures and actually need to have those additional things. If you have something like very heavy supervision, then you don't may not require CCTV. Okay, in all places it's not always necessary to do it. And suppose if it's even there, even if you have CCTV but no one is monitoring it, no one is verifying whether what activity is happening, so it's not useful, right? So all those measures that we're talking about should be working. Okay, yeah. So how are training and communication addressed? So how all the people have been trained, what includes within their training, and whether it is properly documented or not, that is also important. And also in terms of training, just remember that training the employee, full-time employee, only full-time employee will not work, because most of the time people who are in the shop floor who are handling the food, and suppose you have person who is a temporary worker. Okay, a temporary worker is more likely to do any such kind of activity which can be affecting the product than a person who is on the temporary on the permanent basis. Okay, so you need to include all these people within the training. Is the performance of the food defense plan evaluated in line with the ISO 22000-2018 clause 9 on performance evaluation? So basically also need to understand whether you are making sure you are challenging your own food defense system within your facility when you're doing internal audits, and also making sure that any kind of improvements that are required have been identified or no. Is an analysis regularly reviewed and is the frequency adequate? Okay, is emergency response team prepared? 8.4 requirement. So if at all any kind of incident happens, suppose any kind of contamination happens, any kind of failure occurs, how your site is going to respond. It's not just okay, this happened and we just noted down, okay, this kind of incident happened, but your site needs to make sure that how you respond in those situations, how you make sure that your product is handled in a way that it doesn't reach the consumer, which can be finally affecting, the consumer, and how you're dealing with that, whether you have isolating the product, not allowing it to be distributed into the market, and or maybe if you have identified it later, how you are dealing with any kind of recalls that are required. All those things are all the above effectively implemented through the organization's FSMS. So this is also like, comes down to how effectively you have implemented all these systems in place. So this is how the audit usually happens for this particular food defense clause within the FSSC 22000. You need to be aware about. So thank you so much for attending this particular training on food defense. It was great to discuss about all the different requirements of food defense, for majorly, focusing into the FSSC 22000 requirements. I hope you like the training. If you do let us know about your feedback. If you have any further questions, you can write to us, email us at info@shopfoodsafety.com. Also scan this QR code to understand about our services, visit our website, and just stay with us for more such trainings. Thank you. Bye.